Hey everyone, welcome to another session of A Day in the Life of a BA. My name's James and I'm the president of IIBA Ireland and I'll be your host today. At IIBA Ireland, our mission is to support professionals by sharing knowledge, common terminology, and practical insights into the work that us business analysts do across different industries or domains. And that's the whole point of this series, to give you a chance to hear directly from different BA professionals about their typical day, like their processes, the tools and techniques they use, and the challenges and successes that they have encountered within their industry or domain. And each month, we try to invite a different BA professional to share their own personal journey, highlighting like the approaches they take, the technologies they rely on, and share real world examples from their own work. So whether you're considering a career in business analysis, already working alongside another business analyst, or just simply looking to deepen your understanding of the role, today's session is designed to give you that clarity, the confidence, and a shared language for working effectively with BAs. And this session is a little bit different, where we talk about how you can effectively navigate starting in a new domain or industry. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Kiran. Kiran will be walking, sorry, Kiran will be walking us through her own day in the life and sharing practical insights into how you can start as a BA in a new domain or industry or a new territory. Throughout the session, please feel free to turn on your cameras if you like for interactions, and we will leave a space at the end for Q&A. So if you want to submit your questions into the Q&A tab or the chat, we will go through them at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to yourself, Kiran, and I will set up the screen.
Thank you, James. So firstly, welcome everybody. You guys probably just missed while James and I were chatting, and Vinesh and Nigel, if you could drop in the chat where you're joining from. And just to give it a flavor of networking, you can drop in your LinkedIn link as well. Firstly, thank you for reaching out and sending your questions, scenarios. So which made me redo my slides on the long weekend, but as long as you get value out of it, it's all good. So I've tried to cover, I think, most of the questions that I received. And because we are short of time, so let's dive straight into this as I have a lot for you. As James said, we'll keep questions in the end. Is that okay with everybody? Is that good to go? Give me a thumbs up in the chat. Drop a thumbs up. I'll try and make it interactive. I know some people just woke up, but some are on their way back from a busy day. And you've got lots to listen from me. Okay, so let's start this session with my own first week story. So I was working in a bank for a long time in corporate systems. So for people who don't know that, it's all the HR things, your pay, like your payrolls, etc. And then I was moved to a major transformation project on operational risk, compliance, and assurance. Big words, and you can imagine, oh my God, week one felt like landing in a foreign country where everybody speaks a language that I don't understand. The funny thing was, this language felt like a string of letters, aka acronyms, and words that made no sense to me then. But stakeholders assumed I already understood the business. I sat through all meetings where almost every sentence contained an acronym or a word I didn't understand. I spent the entire meeting taking notes and then several hours afterwards decoding the language. And at the time, it felt uncomfortable. When everybody was nodding along in the meetings and contributing to a discussion, and I'm sitting there feeling dumb, feeling like an outsider, feeling anxious, doubting my own skills. My imposter syndrome was at an all-time high. My brain was asking me, what the hell have you landed yourself into? But thankfully, my heart was telling me, you'll be fine. Trust yourself. Take one step at a time. Look around for help. And very soon, you'll be one of them, which at that time was very difficult to believe. But within 2 months, I was given the lead BA role for a feature which was called module back then and reporting stream with my own Scrum team and three BAs whose work I was responsible for. If you had told me this when I started, I would have thought that was impossible. And you've probably gone crazy too, like me. I didn't trust myself, so how could you trust me? But if I could get there in a few weeks, you can also move from being an outsider to being a trusted advisor by approaching this systematically. Did I know everything in 2 months? No, but I had built a strong foundation. and I was confident to do what a BA from the domain would have done then, bring clarity, alignment within the stakeholders to reach the outcomes and the value the project had to deliver. So today, I will give you a practical, honest guide to your first 30 to 90 days in a new organization or domain based on 20 years of doing this across banking, telecom, insurance, auto finance, and financial crime in India, Australia, and the UK. Even within banking, I've worked in very different parts: corporate systems, operational risk, procurement, etc. So every time I moved, even within the bank, I felt like being an outsider with my experience clock being reset. So this is not theory. Everything I share today, I've done myself, learned the hard way, or wish someone had told me earlier. So we'll try and keep it for 45 to 50 minutes, but as I said, there is a lot to cover, but I will keep time for questions at the end. And for all the people you've joined, you will get your surprise bonus that is sent on LinkedIn. So please stay along. Thank you for going to the next slide, James. So we'll move through 4 parts. First is how to land well and manage your own confidence. Second will be your 90-day playbook. Third will be how to learn the domain fast. And fourth will be how to think, observe, and deliver your way to being a trusted advisor. Next slide, please. James, could you go next? Thank you. Okay, so we've talked about the new domain thing, right? So one thing I will add is that starting somewhere new feels disorienting, even for experienced people, and that is normal. The same 3 letters can mean different things in different teams. Processes look familiar, but run differently underneath. Stakeholders assume you already know, so they skip the basics. You're expected to add value early, often before you've decoded half the terminology. So success here is rarely about learning faster. It is about learning smarter. Could you go to the next slide, please? Before I go into how we get there, I just want to remind you that there is a window, approximately 30 days, where you see things experienced people have stopped noticing long ago. The workaround everyone accepts as normal, the process step nobody questions, the tension in meetings nobody names, and the ways of working that are not optimal or lean. And that window always closes. The question is whether you use it on purpose or let it pass. So what you see right now, the anomalies, the accepted workarounds, unquestioned steps, and what fades fast is your beginner curiosity, the willingness to ask the obvious questions, the habit of writing everything down. Use these while they still feel natural. And what you must do? Orient before you analyze, observe before you assume, ask before you conclude, and document while it still feels new. I'll leave a question for you, and I'd like you guys to finish this sentence and drop it in the chat. So in my first week somewhere new, I noticed, drop it in the chat what you thought was, sits into one of these 3 columns, and let's see what you think. Drop it in the chat, guys. I'll repeat. In my first week somewhere new, I noticed, did you notice something odd in week 1 that looked normal to everyone else? So put that in the chat and we'll have a look at that. Whilst you do that, could we go to the next slide, please, James? Okay. All right, so when you're feeling new, right? So new starters underperform when anxiety takes over, not when they lack skill. So I would like you to normalize the dip and use this simple calm method to manage it. In the calm method, C stands for curiosity over competence. So in week 1, the job is to learn, not to prove. So reframe I should know this into I get to find this out. A stands for acknowledging that dip. Feeling behind for the first few weeks is the learning curve, not a verdict on you. Name it and expect it. L stands for landing small wins daily, whether it's one term learned, one person met, one process understood. Visible progress rebuilds confidence fast. Now, again, a call out here is it depends on personality types. It's like half glass full and half glass empty. Some people focus too much on half glass empty, but I would strongly recommend believe in yourself, do small things daily, and it will build quickly. And M stands for mapping a mentor, make a note of your wins, find a buddy, talk to someone. Confidence drops fastest when you isolate. So you might have this feeling of being left behind for the first 2 to 6 weeks, but slowly your small wins will start lifting up your confidence. And I've got another story here. So I had moved from loan originations to loan servicing. Same industry, just different capabilities. Now, everybody was talking about payments, payment arrangements, hardships, write-off, house interest charged, and I could not follow anything for the first few weeks. So basic common sense things I could relate with, like, yes, you need to make payments for your loan, you can go into hardship, you can ask for a payment plan, the financier can write off your loan, but I did not know the systems behind it, the business rules behind it, the why behind things. And I was the newbie where everybody had been in the project for more than 3 years. Not only did I feel left behind, there was an anxiety within me because meeting after meeting, and I could not stitch the picture together, how systems work together and why in the first place. What was the architecture? What was the systems, or what was the enterprise architecture? I wanted to go back to in time to my old project where I knew everything. But growth does not come from comfort zones. Could we go to the next slide? So your 90-day onboarding roadmap. I want to start by saying that what we will talk about are mental modes. They're not rigid calendar weeks. So adjust this according to the complexity of the environment. So if you think you're ready to, shadow someone, right? Don't say that Kiran said you should do that only from day 8 onwards. So the framework is orient, observe, connect, and contribute. So orient is in your week 1, understand the context before you analyze. Read your business cases, find the org chart. Now, org chart is super important. See what your company does. Why do they exist? What is their mission, vision? What is the strategy? How are they structured and why? How do different departments talk to each other? Start your glossary. This is a non-negotiable for me even today. Ask basic questions without apology. This is your foundational investment, not wasted time. Understand where your project fits in. How does it tie back to the strategy? Read the business case. What does success mean for your project? Are there any metrics for it? What triggered your project? Was it a problem statement, a pain point, or was it an opportunity? Find out those details. Find the current state. Understand who are your stakeholders, who is getting impacted by it, and how and why. Try and gather as much surface level information as you can. You don't have to read everything in week 1, but wherever you get information, just get it with you. The next part is observe. Shadow a senior BA, attend meetings, and just listen. Build your stakeholder map. Start a SIPOC and an as-is map. Again, if you don't know SIPOC, don't worry about it. We'll cover that later. Do some level of process mapping. Understand the applications involved, how they talk to each other, what impacts what is the flow. Bring your systems thinking hat. Build levels of process map to navigate from bird eye view to the weeds. Your strongest instrument now is your willingness to watch and absorb. Make note of whatever you don't understand. If you don't feel confident to ask in the meeting, book time with your senior BA or PM once or twice a week to go through your queries. Understand them contextually. And don't worry about jumping into tools straight away unless you've been assigned a deliverable in week 1. Build your basics. Build a picture in your mind that tells a story. What is the background of your project? What triggered it? Who triggered it? What is the value statement? What are the outcomes and the metrics? Your next phase is connect, right? So you observe end users directly, book coffee catch-ups, run your first playbacks, start your RAID log before your risks become issues. For people who don't know what RAID is, it stands for Risk, Assumptions, Issues, and Dependencies, and we'll cover that later. Request, if you can, to observe your end users. See what workaround and shortcuts they use that are not documented in your operating procedures. Depending on who you are shadowing and what their bandwidth is like, you might want to do passive shadowing where you observe, collect your queries, and maybe find a slot in their diary where you can go through those questions instead of interrupting them as they're doing their work. And the last bit is contribute. So, as I said, use your fresh eyes while they still exist, challenge what does not make sense, and bring your outside view as a strength. Do not ignore this. I've joined many projects and respectfully challenged, why are we doing things a certain way? For example, if the project has been picked up a few months later or a year later since the problem statement was defined, I have asked question, is the problem statement even valid? Have things changed since the problem statement was last defined? Is there a better way of reaching your outcome that is more strategic? But please be mindful of your organization politics. Do not challenge in a way where other person feels it takes it personally. Bring the change in slowly. Start with your own work. Show how it adds value and why is it better, right? And then eventually let it be a part of the process. Now, there is something that I have not covered that goes from day -1 till whatever time you are in the project. And that is the use of AI to learn about the domain. Now, why I included this, because somebody had sent me a question like, how do we even apply for jobs in a different domain? I'm not covering that, but I've put content in here and in the bonus pack that you will get that will help you learn about the domain. So I had joined a project which was in a different domain, but at a high level, I knew what they were doing. So even before I had joined the project, which is like my day -1 or whatever it is, I had done Google search on what does that mean? What were the key terms related to the domain? What are the regulations or other things I need to be mindful of? What are the basic building blocks for a project like this, etc. And I said Google search because this was a few years back and I was not aware of Gen AI back then. But now you have AI in your pocket. So ask your LLM. For example, if you're joining an auto finance project, ask your AI to act as a BA in that domain. Explain you at a high level what the process is end to end. What is the customer journey? What are the key terms or acronyms people use? What sort of things can go wrong, etc. And as I said, you can use this approach even when you're preparing for your interviews or switching to another domain. But in that case, don't forget to add 2 more questions. What are my transferable skills from my experience so far that will help me ease transition into this new domain? And what are the analogies and similarities that I can build on from my past experience? So that helps you prepare for interviews. There is a lot of content for you in the field guide that I will drop in the chat later. The key message is the BA who orients well in week 1 contributes far more effectively in month 2. So this is not about going slowly. It is about going in the right direction from the start. And I always say direction because in this AI augmented world, your velocity, which is the speed in the right direction, matters more than just the speed. Are you guys with me so far? It's very quiet. Okay. I know it sounds very theoretical, but as I said, I have a lot of content to cover. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so this slide will make your roadmap concrete and measurable. So each column is a checkpoint with a clear test of what good looks like. So for example, by day 30, if you're oriented, then you would understand what your organization background is, you would know the values, you would have started your glossary and shared, met your manager, a senior BA, SME, where probably some sort of process mapping is drafted. How do you test? You can explain what the organization does and where you fit. And as I said, if you don't know about SIPOC, don't worry, but it's more of like an outside inwards look into your space. Who are your customers? What outcomes you're building for them? What processes are impacted? Who are your suppliers and what inputs are needed? By day 60, when you're in the contributing stage, you would have your stakeholder maps, your RAID logs will be live, as is processes will be validated with a few people. You would have observed at least one end user or ran a playback. And your test is you're surfacing real issues now, not just asking questions. And when you move to trusted, you're owning requirements for your area. You're challenging assumptions with evidence. You're known as reliable and clear. Delivered one visible early win. And your test at this point is people bring you in early because your judgment adds value. And just on that point, and I'm conscious of time, if you get a chance, read my article on LinkedIn on judgment. It will help you understand what does judgment mean. And I know suddenly with AI being so talked about, judgment is like in all, I think it would be your LinkedIn feed should be full of judgment. But let me just clarify one thing. Judgment was not born in the AI era. Judgment has always been the core ask of business analysis, just that with other admin, scribe type activities, focus went more on deliverables versus value. Judgment is your ability to read the room, sense the misalignment, steer the conversations to bring clarity, see the impact beyond your feature, your project, etc. So if you get a chance, read it and let me know if you've got any questions, but there should be 2 articles on judgment. Otherwise, I'll send the link to James and he can share it with you guys later. Another tip is keep playing back your learning. And I'm saying senior BA, but I don't mean a title of senior BA, someone who has been there long enough to guide you, someone who can help you validate that are you on the right track. This ensures your foundations are rock solid, and this will also help in building judgment. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is super important. So most BAs skip this and go straight to requirements, but make the case for 2 days on context first. Understand your organization background, right? If you can, if there's a letter from CEO, an annual report, whatever it is, go and read that because that's where you will understand what are the real priorities and pressure for your organization. Visions, values, and strategy. In regulated industries, these constrain what a project can and cannot do. So knowing them early explains why some things are non-negotiable. Organization structure. So where does the BA team sit? Are they embedded in the business or are they central in IT? This shapes your access and your authority in workshops. And your place. Ask your manager in week 1, what does successful 90 days look like? Leaving this vague is the most common cause of frustrated BAs and disappointed stakeholders. Another tip, not related to this session, if you are in an interview and your manager asks, your hiring managers ask you if you've got any question for us, please ask them what does a successful, 30, 60, 90 days look like for them. That way you will get a view of what are their critical priorities that they're working on and what is expected from you. I am touching interviews as I'm going because I did get this question around interviews as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so there are 2 org charts that exist. The one is the formal one, which shows your reporting lines, but the informal one shows who actually decides, and you need both. So let's look at the formal org chart on the left. Find where you sit in that chart. Like in this, you can see that this is where you are here. But the other one is the informal power map on the right. Now, this you will not get in your intranet or in your org charts. You need to draw this yourself after about 2 weeks of watching and listening. Who actually makes the decisions? Who does the sponsor genuinely listen to? Who can unblock things quietly? And who can block them just as quietly? Who should you not underestimate? This map never gets published, and it is usually the more useful one. Like somebody told me once, if you want to sign off from a head off, be friends with the executive assistants. And I think it works. Next slide, please. So you can see like I've moved from a roadmap to techniques that can help us. But again, having said that, there is no, this is the right way of doing things. These are just some techniques. There are other things as well, but this is just to get you started. Now, capability model. I am oversimplifying this, but a capability model is a stable map of what a business is able to do. That is, what are the capabilities? It does not change every time the org chart or a process changes, which makes it the fastest way to grasp an unfamiliar domain. For example, customers and channels, products and proposition, sales and origination, servicing and operations, risk compliance finance, enabling functions. So, so most industries share the same level 1 capability map. So this transfers well between companies. How to build it first? Ask an AI tool for a level 1 capability list for your industry and then validate or rename with one SME. Getting information wrong is fine. The corrections are your learnings. And I did try that when I just recently moved to another domain. I'd had my capability model ready. And then once I moved in, I could map things. Okay, this fits into this capability, this fits into this capability, and we are probably missing something. So it does help. Can you go to the next slide, please? A context diagram puts the process or system in scope at the center and shows every entity it exchanges data with. So it answers 3 questions on one page: where scope starts and stops, what flows in and out to whom, and who do you depend on. So if you look at this system, so it will show, okay, you interact with customer, your upstream, downstream systems, your operations teams, your regulator, your external vendor. So the arrows are the data flows. Each one is a question: what exactly moves in, which direction, and who owns it. Try and draw it in week 1. Again, as I said, don't worry about the tools, do it on a whiteboard. The arguments about what sits inside the box versus outside it are exactly the scope conversations you want to have early, not late. Who can help you build that? Maybe your architects, your tech leads, anybody who helps you, just go and get it done. The next slide again, and just on that point, you might have business context and system context diagrams. So the idea is the same. You have your central box and how does it interact with other related entities. Okay, the next one is on your gather the artifacts. So request the team. Again, the purpose is not to read everything cover to cover. I'm sure you guys would have joined teams where I helped in a similar way where somebody gives me, this is the SharePoint link. This has got all the documents for you to go and read. And we didn't have like Gen AI then to go and summarize all these documents. So the purpose is not to read everything cover to cover, right? It is to understand the landscape and have an intelligent conversation about what is current. Explore the intranet. Most BAs underuse it. Your training portal is gold. If you need a tool you do not know, find a course before you need it and not under pressure. So for example, when we were told that we'll use ARIS for process modeling, we were all sent on a course for using ARIS, and not like if you had to deliver a process within 2 weeks. Build from day 1 the living glossary, which is your single highest value artifact a new BA can produce, because every domain has its own language and your glossary surfaces misunderstandings before they become errors. And if you're working in agile teams, ask to see the definition of done and definition of ready in your first sprint, because teams drift from their own standards without noticing. So see what was agreed, right? Now, there is a documentation risk that you need to be aware of. The most dangerous sentence in any new engagement is, it's all in the documentation. Always ask when a document was last updated and whether it still reflects how things actually work. The gap between the document and today's reality is where your best insights hide. I do have a story, but I'm conscious of time, so we'll keep moving. Priority contacts in your week 1, right? So this is people strategy, super important. Your line manager first, senior BA or BA second, then a domain SME and a developer, all within first 2 weeks. Now the sequence is deliberate because each conversation builds on the last. Try and book in coffee catch-ups with people, right? So I've seen that people open up in an informal setting in a way they never do in a formal meeting. A 20-minute coffee is worth more than 3 stakeholder interviews for intelligence. The third thing is shadow a senior BA. Ask what their typical week looks like and what the unwritten rules are. Sit in on their meetings and just listen. And the question that works every time: what do you wish you had been told when you started here? Ask this of everyone you meet in the first 2 weeks. And the answers are surprisingly honest and consistently useful. Again, I will now share a story because I have one more story. It's like I did join a project recently and I'd been chasing my business stakeholder to get hold of some documentation. So I logged in and INAME and there was a Teams message from him saying he wanted to have a chat. And I was super excited that, okay, finally I was getting the document I needed. But his reply was he was sorry. And I was like, sorry for what? It's just 9 a.m. I've just logged in and I haven't even seen you for days. So he said that he was rude to me when I was chasing him for documents. And I was like, oh, really? Because he's such a nice guy that till date I cannot ever recollect him being rude to me. But he gave me a background, like, oh, in that coffee catch up, that there was a background in the way their boss perceived the project team. And that mindset was what the team was involuntarily drawn into. Now, I was not only new to the project and the domain, I was new to the company too. So I had no clue what he was talking about. But when he gave me a bit of background and a history, it completely changed how I interacted with their team going forward because I knew what their concerns were. I knew why there was lack of trust. So I could address those points first every time I had conversations with them. So don't forget your coffee catch-ups. The next slide, please. This one is called now BACCM. It is from BABOK. It's called the Business Analysis Core Concept Model. So these are 6 interconnected concepts sit under every BA activity. So if you don't know where to begin, start here. Use these as a checklist for every conversation in your first 30 days. So find out what's the change, what is being changed and why now? What pain is it solving or the value it is creating? Is this the right response to the business need? Who is impacted and who's missing? V's for how do we measure success and for whom? The context and what forces shape what we can and cannot do. All 6 are connected. You change one and the other moves. That is why it works as a lens for every stakeholder conversation, not just a definition to memorize. This is a mental compass that steers your conversations. Next slide, please. Okay. These are 8 questions that separate real understanding from going through the motions. Keep them handy and ask, why are we doing this? The business reason, not the project description. What is the value and to whom? If you cannot answer this, you cannot prioritize. And I'm sure you all would have come in that situation where everybody comes to you saying, this is our priority one. So you will suddenly have like 8 priority one items sitting at your desk. So you need some way to navigate that prioritization conflict. What does success look like? The measurable outcome, not the output. Who gets impacted? Who benefits? Who loses? Who was not invited? What do we do today? Understand the current state before you design. This is also called as discovery, in case you come across that term. What if we do nothing? This is super important because at times when you work through this, the cost of inaction will reveal the real urgency. What are the constraints? Time, budget, regulation, technology, politics. What are we assuming? Assumptions are invisible risks, so make them explicit. And the one that I have not added, which has just slipped my mind, and I will come back to it. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, this is the SIPOC I was talking about. So SIPOC gives you a 1-page view of any process before you go into the detail. So instead of going into like log in and do something and then something, you start outwards, right? So you go wide, fast, and focus on the big picture, which is exactly what week 1 needs. So you don't need to know in week 1, like, how do you onboard someone as like the full end-to-end process? You need to know what are those high-level processes, how do they link together, and maybe SIPOCs for a few of them. Again, if you've not used SIPOC, all good. You need to be able to do some sort of, as I said, stitch the picture together. What are your level 1 process maps, level 2 process maps, level 3 process maps? And again, intention is not to confuse you, but it's like going from that like the bird's eye view to going down slowly into weeds. So from SIPOC perspective, as I said, suppliers feed into inputs, which flow through the process to produce outputs for customers. Now, the process column should not be very busy. You should probably have maybe 6 high-level steps. Details come later when you do the detailed process mapping. The real value is the boundary conversation. Disagreement about what goes in each column are often more useful than the finished diagram. So book 30 minutes with week 1 domain SME, ask them to walk a single core process through the 5 columns, populate the SciPoc, leave the gaps if you're not sure, send it back and ask, does this look right? So the corrections are the intelligence. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, before you guys say that these arrows are going, they don't look proper or they don't look clean. Again, as I said, this is a picture from AI, generated by AI. So yeah, so don't do it this way, do it properly. Now, never document what the SOP says, right? So document what people actually do. If you guys do not understand, so your process document might be saying something else, but people might have the shortcuts. They might be doing some manual things on the side. So document what people actually do. And the gap between the two is where your most important work begins. So the lanes represent accountability, not teams. Every time flow crosses a lane boundary, it is a handoff. And every handoff is a potential failure point and a requirement risk. So look at the anomaly marker on the diagram. That's where you flag workarounds, and where you will get, we always do it this way, moments during observation. Start on a whiteboard or sticky notes, not a tool. The conversation matters more than the diagram. And then, as I said, playback and validate your understanding and date every version. So a quick reminder, your existing process maps may describe how things worked 2 years ago, but always walk a map through with someone who does the work today before you rely on it for requirements. Next slide, please. Oh my God, it's like I'm running out of time. Let's do that quickly. Okay, stakeholder map, power and interest. So a rough map built in week 1. Again, you put them in different quadrants. And I think this is self-explanatory. So your high power, high interest is the one that you need to manage closely. Regular engagement, involvement decisions. Then your top left, high power but lower day-to-day interest. You update them, but you never surprise them. A surprise sponsor is a dangerous sponsor. Your bottom right is your high interest, low authority, often your SMEs. You consult them often. And the bottom left is the ones that you monitor, you revisit regularly. And again, a call out is people move between quadrants as projects evolve. Next slide, please. Sorry, I will run through it because I need to give you guys your bonus. RACI, again, this is for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Responsible is the person who does the work. A is accountable, owns the outcome. Now, there can be only one accountable person per task. 2 A's is a governance problem. No A is a gap. So you need to find out who is accountable, who owns the outcome. And that's only one person. C is for consultant, like a two-way input, like in two-way information exchange. And I is informed, like you just keep them up to date. So you need to start building your RACI. In a familiar organization, you assume roles informally, but in a new one, you cannot. A RACI validated with your sponsor, PM, SME, BA, whoever, in week 2 prevents months of accountability confusion. Okay, next slide, please. The next is RAID, another acronym for risk, assumptions, issues, dependencies. So a BA who starts a RAID log in week 1 shows 2 things at once: structured thinking about what could go wrong and a proactive habit. So both build trust faster than any qualification. I think I said that earlier, but if not, so you need to also work on, you are building your rapport with your stakeholders, right? So risks are things that have not happened yet but could happen. Give them a likelihood, an impact, and an owner. A risk with no owner is just a worry. Assumptions, things you treat as true without confirmation. Writing them down makes invisible dependencies visible. Issues, things have already happened and need action now. So keep these distinct from risks. And your dependencies are things you're waiting on from others. They're almost always undermapped early. So ask, what are we dependent on? Some other upgrade done by some other project or whatever it is. I'll skip the story here. We'll go to the next slide, please. Observe end users. As I said, no document explains a user's pain better than watching a user in pain. I don't mean it literally, but it's like when you see them doing their job. Observation is the most underused technique in BA onboarding and the one with the highest return on time. So you could use job shadowing, watch before you ask, interrupting changes what they do. So let them work, take notes, and ask everything at the end. Then think aloud is brief the user to narrate their thinking, not just their actions. So this produces extraordinary intelligence about gaps and workarounds. The third is contextual inquiry. Question at someone's actual workstation gets honest answers. The same question asked in a meeting room gets a polished, edited version. And process walkthrough, ask them to walk through even with like a happy flow, not the exception, because the common case is messier and the mess is where the real requirements live. Now, just a call out here, in some industries like banking, some parts of banking, direct observation may need authorization if you're working with critical customer data. So work through your line manager and frame every request as learning and orientation. But if access is restricted, a facilitated walkthrough with a senior SME is your best alternative. Next slide, please. Okay, so the playback and the 5 anomalies is, as I said, after 2 to 3 weeks, run a structured playback, share what you think you understand, invite correction. It is one of the fastest trust-building techniques because it shows intellectual honesty. People rarely correct you for what you have right, but they will enthusiastically correct you what you have wrong, and that is the information you need. So these are some like example prompts that you can use, the verbatims that you can use, like, here's how I understand the current process. Is this right? Here are the main points I have heard. Would you add anything? And then you also capture the anomalies, the unofficial workarounds, rogue spreadsheets, sticky notes, WhatsApp group. Each is a requirement the organization could not articulate. The hesitation moment, a pause mid-task marks a friction point that should not exist. A duplicate data entry. The same data into 2 systems means platform misalignment, almost always in scope. So these are some kind of examples of anomalies, right? Informal approvals, corridor chat approvals. That's a governance gap in a regulated industry. And the best of all is we always do it this way. It's never a full stop. Always ask why. Almost always a buried requirement or a control nobody remembers. Next slide, please. Okay. It would be a crime if I don't talk about AI. So AI does not replace judgment or experience. It accelerates learning, challenges thinking, and speeds up preparation. So state the data boundary clearly. Understanding a new domain, spend 20 minutes asking AI to explain key concepts before a meeting in an unfamiliar area. You will ask better questions. Prepare your questions, paste your sidewalk, process notes, whatever you have, and ask what gaps it sees. So stress test before the room. Draft artifacts for feedback, a first draft of your glossary, RAID log, or stakeholder map, then validate with your team. So using AI as your thinking partner, check your understanding. Ask what you are likely to have misunderstood. If you don't understand a technique that your team is using, from BABOK, Agile, whatever, ask AI to explain any technique in the context of your situation. Use AI as your discovery partner, as I said, but use the AI approved by your organization. Give it context, what you're trying to do. Ask it to help you prepare for workshops. Critique the content that you're about to present before the workshop. Have you missed anything? Edge cases, negative scenarios, etc. The important boundaries: never paste confidential client data, colleague names, or sensitive project details into a public AI tool. Use AI for thinking, preparing, and learning, not for processing sensitive information. So check your own AI policy first. This matters ethically and professionally. And the other call out is you don't outsource your thinking and judgment to AI. You think and AI helps, and then you review it, right? You are still sitting in the driving seat. The accountability is yours. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, AI might feel overwhelming for a few of you. There are lots of prompting frameworks around. They are all, in short, in one line, structured thinking in practice. So you will see many prompting frameworks out there: Clear, RACE, CRISP, CoStar, GCSE, etc. They all cover the same ground: context, what you're trying to do, what's the role you want AI to take, the goal that you have your query for, the inputs that should be provided, the constraints, as in like, don't invent information or just use these sources. Your output format, for example, you want a PDF, and your tone, for example, you might say, I want an executive style summary of this. So they are formalizing what good communicators, good analysts, and good leaders have always done naturally. The difference now is that your stakeholder is an AI, but the skill is the same. Structure in, structure out. A few seconds framing a prompt saves you from vague generic answers. So use this to start learning about domain, help you prepare for meetings, review your output, use it as your thinking partner. Now, this is different if AI is the solution, but that we will leave for some other day. And when I say AI is the solution means you've got a model, but as I said, we'll park that for some other time. Next slide, please. So these are some 4 prompt cards that will help you. You don't need to copy, as I said, because you guys have joined. So I will send you the field kit, which will have these prompts. So each uses the core star structure. Again, as I said, don't get worried about the different names of prompting frameworks. So the placeholder in the brackets are meant to be swapped from your own company, industry, role, and topic. So domain primer will help you before you join, a glossary and 5 smart questions for your first week, building a capability model, drafting a context diagram, preparing for a stakeholder chat. Okay, next slide, please. So this is something I really want you to be mindful of, the 6 common traps where these are like your red flags. So try diving into requirements before context. And also on this point, diving even into solutions before requirements. And a lot of people who come from, development backgrounds, solution backgrounds, when they transition to BAs, that's how their brain is wired, that they go into solutions even before they understand requirements. So don't start the how part of your brain until you understand the what and the why. So spend 2 days understanding the organization first. The other trap is treating documents as the source of truth. Instead, ask when it was last updated and walk it through with someone who does the work. The another trap is going quiet to look competent, because you might be like, oh no, they would figure out that I'm not following anything. So instead, as I said, ask questions. There are no silly questions, and good questions build credibility faster. The other one is mapping only the formal org chart. As I said, draw the informal power map by week 2. The other one is saving big questions for one big meeting. People are busy, and your meeting probably does not add any value to them. So ask when you can, ask it in the moment, over coffee, walking to the lift with them, whatever it is, right? Little and often beats one interrogation. And the last one is pasting sensitive data into public AI. Please don't do that. Use AI for thinking and learning, never for confidential information. Next slide, please. So from outsider to trusted advisor. So this is the destination of the whole session. So outsiders when you're learning the language, contributors when you surface real issues, and trusted advisor is when you're brought in early for your judgment, not just for your outputs. And the behaviors that earn it are playback early and off, run your raid log in the open, surface risks before they become surprises, always ask the value question, and tie every requirement back to who benefits. Challenge with evidence, and as I said, respectfully, deliver one visible early win, because proof beats promises in a new environment. Next slide, please. So this is your quick reference, which is read before you do, build your glossary, people over documents, apply the BACCM lens, ask the 8 questions, SIPOC first, detail second. Again, don't worry about SIPOC. What I mean is like just stitching the picture from a process map perspective. Stakeholder map in week 1, read log from day 1, observe, do not just ask, and play back and validate. Next slide, please. So your key takeaways from this session are: orient before you analyze. Documents are your starting points. The gap between the document and reality is where your insights live. Apply BACCM and ask the hard questions: why, what value, what success, who's impacted, what if we do nothing. Your fresh eyes have an expiry date, so use your outsider view urgently, and play back and validate early. So confidence comes from validating understanding, not from pretending you know. Next slide. So this will be a take-home toolkit, which I'll show to you in just 2 minutes. So that will have your organization discovery checklist. It will have your living grocery template, meeting observation templates, coffee catch-up guide, end user observation log, and building confidence systematically. So I'll show you that in a minute. And your AI prompt library, as I said. Can you go to the next slide, James? Okay. So just I'll show you what is there in your, sorry, I'm just trying to take the screen from you, James. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah, okay. So this will be your field kit. So as a thank you, your bonus for being here. As I said, we had probably way higher numbers than people who attended. So this is for you guys. This is your 90-day journey, which is, what are the things you should do? It's like a checklist. Again, this is not like something that's, use what's applicable for you, what's valid for you, and tailor it as per your need. So when you're orienting, contributing, sorry, and trusted, right? So these are pretty much what we've just discussed. The next one, this is an extension of the calm, not extension, but a different way of building your confidence. So calm model was to manage your anxiety around that newness, more on the emotional side of things. But this is like, how do you actually do it? Understand the organization, the systems thinking, what deliverables you need to produce, connect deliverables to outcomes, connect outcomes to value, align to strategy, continuously ask, am I adding value? Create an approach document for yourself, use that approach to align others, and capture lessons learned. So when you do A1 to A10 plus trust in your process or in your approach, you will eventually, confidence will start emerging. And this is your AI prompt library. Again, they're basic prompts. You can tailor them. But this is like your domain primer. If you want to summarize an annual report, strategy, business case, whatever document, build a level 1 capability map. Again, as I said, you can change the roles, tailor it for your context, draft a context diagram, prepare for a stakeholder conversation, explain a technique in my context, stress test my notes for gap, draft an artifact for feedback, check my understanding, prepare for a critical workshop, and move into a new domain. And again, this one is useful for your interview preparation too. And then this is your pocket reference guide, your BACCM thinking lens, what questions to ask, your calm model, red flags in your first 30 days, 5 anomalies to log. These are some starter templates, what you should do, your glossary, what's the term, what's the meaning, in what context it is used, who gave you that meaning, and what date you had it for. This is your template for meeting observation log, for your coffee catch-up guides. These are some like scripts that you can use, and your end user observation log. The one thing I want you guys to remember is feeling like an outsider in the first week or two is normal, even for experienced people. So be curious, keep a growth mindset, land small wins, and challenge respectfully once you understand the context. Use your fresh eyes before they fade. And the gap between outsider and a trusted advisor closes faster than you think. So I will drop that in the chat. And just on that point, now I want you guys to reflect on what was the hardest point of starting somewhere new for you. What do you wish you had been told earlier in your career? Which technique will you try first and when? So as I said, feeling overwhelmed, anxious, outsider, and probably the least knowledgeable person in the room in the first week or two is absolutely okay. It is a part of the journey. And I said, be curious, have a growth mindset, and always willing to learn. And the gap between an outsider and a trusted advisor will start closing very soon. Feel free to ask for help within your team, from AI, and I'm here if you need anything. So I just want to say thank you to James and IIBA Ireland for building this community that helps us learn from each other and not be left alone when things look crazy. And thank you to all of you for taking time to join this session. I hope you found some value in it. And I will drop the take-home field toolkit in the chat now as you ask me questions. Are there any questions anybody would like to ask?
Thanks so much for that session. That was really, really
Sorry, I
interesting and
wasted
valuable.
it.
You got through it all.
I was like, oh my goodness, I'm looking at the time and I'm like, I haven't done my kid. Sorry.
No
Let me
problem
just
at all.
drop the.
I do see some questions in the chat, but guys, if you do want to come off mute and ask them instead, you're more than welcome. Before I start reading them out of the chat, does anyone want to come off mute and ask their individual question?
Yeah, I can start. Hi, Kiran, this is Komal,
Hi. Hi,
and I
Komal.
recently migrated to Australia last year, and I'm facing hard time to get a job here. And I was working as BA back in India in data domain in revenue assurance and business assurance teams, and I was writing user stories to find duplicates in the billing, overbilling, and underbilling cases. So, with respect to that, I was getting the bill done from the team of developers. But now here I can see job openings, they are more aligned towards the transformation and migration projects, which are very system oriented. So I'm
Hmm.
facing hard time to transition from core data domain or billing domain. I was a BA in the billing domain. Now transitioning into these system oriented setups, like they write about the migration. You should have experience around migration projects or transformation projects. So I'm not able to understand what sort of user stories I need to write in these setup, and how I need to, what will be my role as a BA. So, with respect to that, can you guide me which courses I should go through to gain knowledge around that? And will they even consider a BA from data domain into these projects, or they will consider the BA who have that relevant experience?
So, okay, Komal, I'll probably stop with that. I think probably I've got a gist of your question. So, it's not related to this conversation. It goes to the interviews part, but I will give you a tip. It's like get your job description, okay,
Okay,
and see, put that in again. I love AI. So put the job description in the AI and ask
okay.
AI what sort of problems are they trying to solve, right? Bring your
Mm-hmm.
own CV and see what's the gap between the two, right? Nobody's going
Okay.
to ask you to write user stories in an interview,
Mm-hmm.
but they will ask you more star-based questions, especially for Australia. And you should be able to take your experience and answer the questions they ask for the problem they are trying to solve. So they are not hiring you for your experience. They are hiring you because they've got a need. They want someone to
Yeah.
come and work on that, right? So you need to see what's the gap, right? And
Mm-hmm.
work on it. And I'm happy to sort of
Okay.
like give you more tips on that offline. I'm just conscious about 3 minutes. So if there are more questions, we'll
Okay.
take
Okay.
that. Yeah. But ping me
Yeah, no
offline. We
problem.
can have a chat on that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, good.
Hey, Kiran. Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
session and the great inputs today. A question or probably a tip would be helpful. See, most interviews are looking for like a specialist or someone who's experienced in a particular domain. These tips that we saw today, I am very well able to connect to it because in a consulting world where they prefer a generalist who can work across different domains, all of these tips are like very easy to like apply. I would like to have some tips where we have been or I have been hired to work on a domain specific a BA role, and there is expectation to hit the ground running from day one. I need to definitely balance between the expectations out of the role and how as BA who's structured and thinking and approach applies these best practices. So any tips to
Move everything to day
manage?
-1. So when you go to the field toolkit, you will find a lot of things in there. So like if they're expecting you to work from day one, try and understand what's the problem statement, right? They will give you some form of documentation. And as I'm assuming most companies are giving some form of AI as well, right? So if you are expected to deliver something, let's say on day 3, you need to be able to get that context. Try and get hold of people. And to your point, Karthik, I would say that whatever prompts are in there, try and take it to day -1, -2. So prepare for it even before you, get into the domain on your day one, right? And I'll give an example. Like I recently moved to a new domain and I had done my prep work before that, as in it's like, what are my capabilities that I need? What are the basic building blocks that I need? What are the things that can go wrong? What are the regulations that are said? So you don't start from day one. The day you get your offer letter, even forget about offer letter, even if you're preparing for interviews, start from there. If you
Okay,
clear interviews, then pick up more prompts to build on your domain because you know this is where you got to go on, when you start on day 0. And then whatever you
that's
get from there, marry the two together and build on it. As I said, get a strong foundation and go up from there.
Oh, thanks. That makes sense. Yeah.
Any questions? So Emmanuel said, I have a question in the Q&A chat. Where is the Q&A chat, James?
Do you want me to read it out, Kiran?
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. How do you handle the gatekeepers in a new organization, particularly where releasing information is a challenge for them?
Where, sorry, what did you say last part? Where what information is a challenge?
Where releasing the information is a challenge
Okay.
for them.
So what would be the reason for that, Emmanuel? That's like my first question. So is the reason like, is it confidential? And I know I'm probably touching on, again, something not related to the topic. It seems like you're working with some difficult stakeholders. So try and unpack that. Like, why they're not releasing the information to you, right? Are you being perceived as threat? Are you someone who's working on a project that will take their job or something else, right? So as I said, there are different avenues, as I mentioned today. You can go approach people, you can get hold of documents, you go in and you can go and sit with like your operations people, you can go and sit with someone who's doing the actual work. So if you think that none of it is working, ping me offline. We'll have a chat around what's your exact scenario and where are you getting stuck, and we'll take it from there. Okay. Questions? There's a question. I can see some questions in the chat. Guys, did you want to ask? Maybe if I start reading, it's like I'll keep reading, okay?
Can I ask that? So my question was, hi Kiran. So my question is like, how do we keep the expectations above and beyond? Like, what would be your tips in handling the difficult product managers and difficult delivery leads across the organization? Sometimes
Yeah.
they think that like they are like BAs need to read the mind and work accordingly. So I've been in those situations. How do I read the mind?
You should have attended my another session I had with Vancouver that worked on reading the mind. So there are no tough stakeholders. I know it's a bold statement that I'm making, but I mean it because at the end of the day, we're working with humans. That's the plus of it. When you work with humans, there's always a reason for somebody being tough, somebody being a difficult stakeholder. And as I always say, we are trained to use 5 whys on process, try and use it on people. And it goes back to what I was telling Emmanuel earlier. Why are people being tough for you? So when they talk about reading their mind, Manoj, like if you give me some examples, I can decode what does that mean for you. There is no way anybody can read their mind, but there are lots of ways in which we can talk or present information that helps the other person to process it and takes the cognitive load from it. So for example, if I'm talking to a finance person and I show him all the beautiful processes, he will say she is a rubbish BA because she did not give me anything on numbers. Whereas if I talk to a sponsor and I give him like, these are my 200 issues and go into start details of everything, he doesn't need to know that. So you tailor your messaging, your conversations based on who you're speaking to. So, and as I said, if you say someone is being difficult, you need to unpack what that difficult means. And I'm happy to work through the scenarios with you.
Oh yeah, sure. I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there are some more questions. Slides. Yeah. Done. LinkedIn comment from me. Yeah, so Sean, to your point around observe days 8 to 30 would be too long to continue to be observing. And typically, yes, I agree with you. As I said, like these are not actual calendar days. This is just to sort of like give you a plan how to work. And with AI coming in, nobody's going to wait for 90 days for you to be on board, especially if you're a contractor, because they will onboard you thinking you are experts and you should be able to sort out that mess. And that's why I said, whatever I've given, move it left, take it to day whatever. Instead of day 0, start from day -10, whatever it is, right? So I agree with you on that point. But as I said, start doing those small wins. If you're expected to deliver a process without you being onboarded correctly, which there is someone I spoke to recently who was in a startup and she was expected to deliver something without she even knowing what the systems were or what the things were, like pretty much what we just discussed. So those people, yeah, you will struggle at a point in time. So you have to approach this systematically. And I'm just scrolling through. How do we keep the expectations? Yeah, that's fine. Danny's okay.
Hi,
Sorry.
hello, Kiran. I'm
Hi,
Anjali. Hi. So I was wondering, okay, we can start a preparation early before we actually onboarded into the job, but there are things like system which you actually understand or their processes when you actually hit the flow and to navigate through people, it takes time, right? And till then, you're expected to deliver. So how do you juggle and short, how you cut short that time,
different
before you.
ways. So one is like you can have some sort of like a functional decomposition thing done. So it's like you don't have to kill the beast with one arrow. So you can break it down into smaller pieces. To your point around like prep work between systems. So if you have the idea of prep work is it gets you ready to be able to ask questions, right? So for example, when I was doing my own thing, I was like, okay, there has to be some sort of data ingestion capability, right? So when I came in on day one, I didn't wait for someone to tell me that, this is how it works. And I'm like, how does the data actually flow? How do you get the data from? What is the ingestion and things like that? So that prepares you for what sort of questions you ask. And to your point around like it being detailed, sorry, you cannot do everything on day one. So break it down systematically. And then, as I said, try and connect it into value. And again, with agile AI, it's like people are moving to more product thinking, hypothesis driven work, and things like that. But breaking it down helps. And again, as I said, learn on prioritization, practice prioritization. How do you do it? And that will help you find a way through.
All right. Thank
If
you.
you're stuck somewhere in a specific scenario, ping me offline and we'll work through it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
I think I've answered all the questions in the chat. Is there anything, James, do you think that I've not covered?
There is one more in the Q&A. Probably let's end on this one, I suppose. Guys, if you need to drop, that's no problem at all. But I didn't want to interrupt the question flow because it's such an interesting conversation. But thanks so much for joining. If you do need to drop, I'll read out this last question and then we can end the session because I know everyone probably wants to get on with their day/evening. This is a long question, so let me try summarize it. How do you manage downstream impacts for multiple releases, especially when dealing with high ambiguity? Yeah, let's just go with that one.
Okay, so downstream impacts. So if you are changing something, or like if somebody even upstream is changing and you are the downstream, then there has to be an impact analysis performed. But if you are the system and you think a downstream needs to be impacted, firstly, you need to identify that, right? You need to do some sort of impact, like who's getting impacted and why. Then you engage them, work through them with like, this is what it is. If you think there's a lot of friction, again, this could be a dependency. Like you might say, hey, we are changing the file that you ingest, which might break the integration that we have set up. And they might say you can't do it because we don't have capacity at the moment. We have our roadmap locked in, things like that. So that becomes a dependency that you manage or a risk that you manage. So you need to find out who's getting impacted, how are they getting impacted, work with them, do your impact analysis, do your prioritization, and agree on a plan together. And be mindful of the rate because in such scenarios, rate becomes super important and your risks become issues very easily if you don't keep a tab on it.
Dinesh, did that answer your question?
Yeah, there's one thing balance I need to get is that how do we manage this under a tight timelines, like because I work on agile sprints and releases are allotted to each sprint and each sprint runs for fortnightly period. And with multiple releases happening on one system and I have to gather requirements, stakeholders don't know what's happening. Upstream is just going live. They don't wait for the downstream to complete the impact assessment. And it's like my responsibility to get everything sorted out. So it's a total chaotic situation. But then as a BA, I'm expected to do that. And I don't have any solution. Like,
do you have a PM, Scrum Master, anybody else in your role, a PO or whoever, somebody else?
Yeah. They're not.
Yeah. So again, as I said, I think BAs are that fallback option for everybody. When
Yeah.
nobody knows what to do, they think a BA has a magical wand to do it. But it's like we are facilitators, we are coordinators, we are not decision makers. We can influence people. So to your point, Vinesh, like if you're going into your sprint, I would even question, is it ready for your sprint? So backlog management and backlog prioritization is a product owner's responsibility. Your Scrum Master's responsibility is, depending on which company you are, it is an inward and an outward view to remove that impediments that stops the team from progressing. So you're not by yourself. If there is somebody who's saying, Vinesh, you need to go and do your job and everybody else's job, ping me offline and I'll tell you how to navigate those conversations.
Okay, so timely escalation is the answer for this, right?
As I said, RAID is your best friend, right? At times I've done this thing that this is the risk and I'm making it visible. If somebody says, no, that's fine, it's okay, I will still document it, that I raised it, and this is like the impact and the likelihood. Sorry, this is the likelihood of it occurring. This is the impact if that happens. You've raised it, but if somebody says, we are okay, we accept it, you note it down as a decision, and that's your full email chain that closes that thread that you raised something. This is what was agreed, this is the decision, and you stop it there.
Good. Yeah, thanks,
So
Kiran.
you don't go around doing everybody's job.
Right.
Yeah, I know it's a rude way of saying it, but yeah, that's what I meant exactly.
Yeah, at least I can put down the blame, aside.
I mean that's another thing is like we need to get off this like I know that the blame culture is everywhere, but
Yeah.
as I said, there's always a way to approach it, and if you need help in navigating those sort of conversations, I'm more than happy to help.
Yeah, and the role's ready to carry blames of BAs, so.
As I said, BA is like, as I said, we are the catch-all for all projects, so
Yeah. Thanks.
all good. Awesome. Is there any other question that I have missed?
I don't see any other question in the chat or the Q&A. So I think we can end the session there. But thanks again, Kiran, for taking the time to present for IIBA Ireland. Really, really insightful. And that toolkit that you had at the end, that's going to be really valuable for attendees. For anyone who's looking for the recording and the slides, they'll be shared within a week of today's date. So just stay tuned. I'll send out an email just so everyone's aware. But thanks again for everyone who joined, who took the time to join. And thanks so much for all of your engagement and questions. And look forward to seeing you guys at the next session. So we can leave it there. But thanks again. Enjoy your evening and your day, morning, wherever you're joining from. And yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.